Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the LGBTQ show. I am your host, Jackie McKethan. Been doing this show maybe for about 4 or 5 years now. My guest is Danielle MacDonald.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi,
It's great to be back.
She's been on before, and
It's number 3 now, I think.
I think so, yeah. And you're always welcome.
Aw.
Okay. We'll get to some things here in just a second. I do want to show this program is brought to you by the Civil Rights Agenda at 2129 Northwestern Avenue in Chicago. And their phone is 773-235-8852. So you can call them and thank them that, they are helping our community with providing a show, and see if there's, anything you can do to help, okay? The other thing is, and I brought this up for the last couple of months, I think, I have started an LGBTQIA scholarship, and this is for Governor State University, and in fact tomorrow morning I'm going to their commencement because we've already given 2 scholarships. One is to a cisgender, and the other one is to a gay man, okay? And the gay man is going to be speaking at the commencement, so I said that I want to go because I want to meet him. I have not met him. Anyway, if you would, if you're interested in helping, call Governor State University in University Park. Okay, so there are multiple items that we want to talk about tonight, but first of all, I want to let Danielle introduce herself, of course, and also talk about what she wants to bring, because that's the purpose of the show. It's not just all about me, it's about what can anybody help our community with, and that includes other transgenders that have a story to tell or have information to give. Okay, so what do you got, girl?
All right, I guess I'm going to have to spill the tea. Is that what we're doing? Just a technical note, because I think we need to let the audience know that the phones are down for the evening.
Exactly.
So it's just going to be a conversation between me and Jackie tonight, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't take any phone calls because something's wrong with them. I don't know.
I just got here. I offer technical support. This is actually a great way to introduce myself. I'm a bit of an engineering nerd. That's my day job. But my passion is in actually artificial intelligence. I don't know if I've ever gone that deep with it really to explain that. But I study a lot of psychology and philosophy and stuff, trying to understand it. But being a transgender woman myself, it's been an interesting angle to consider a lot of the questions of what exactly it means to be a human, be a person, and how. Let me put it this way: a lot of the things, a lot of the challenges that I've dealt with haven't been so much challenges with being trans, but but challenges with how people perceive being trans, and it feels oftentimes like I have to justify my existence to people, and so a lot of the things that I'm interested in has been about perfecting counter arguments, really.
Right. Well, unfortunately, there is absolutely no educational forums out there for, other than like this show, and I believe there's another LGBT show on CAN TV, but we do not educate
We don't let
people.
people know that, like, this is a way that one can live their life, you know? That, like, perhaps this is valid for some of us.
Or that want to live this life. I'm reminded back in, gosh, I don't know, I think it was like 2010, 2011, the country of Canada, the state put out a memo, or directives, that's what I was looking for. Canada put out a directive to every single school in the country saying that the sex ed classes should include information about LGBTQIAs. That all lasted for about 3 days. And because some lady called in and said that it was confusing her daughter, who probably was somebody that had been thinking about all of this all along, they pulled the plug on it.
Well, I think it's a fairly common way to shut down discussion of any taboo subject to start with. But think of the children.
Yeah.
And what are the children going to think? And like, I'm not trying to make fun or anything here, but like, everyone knows what I mean, I think. The problem here is that in my experience, I don't have to explain myself to children. Children are the ones who understand it the fastest. And it seems to me that some adults seem to have learned certain things that make it harder for them to understand my life, I guess.
Well, I think, and I've said this for a long time and all along, I think for a trans person to be coming out, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, or whatever, I will make an exception on intersex because that's something that's so physically apparent that even the doctors can get into it right away. But I know when before I had obtained some of the knowledge I have, anybody asked me why, and I didn't have an answer for it. And there are a lot of transgenders, young, old, whatever, that I think part of their problem is they don't know why. They can't answer the question, which leads to parents that then say, well, we're not going to investigate it.
And this is actually arguments I've had with people before, and it's an expectation that a child can come up to you and say, well, I want to be a girl, or I want to be a boy, or that's what I am. And sometimes kids are just incapable of stating that clearly, particularly just the way that I was raised. I grew up in schools where people would throw slurs regularly around saying, don't act like a girl, that's gay, in a pejorative sense.
Right.
And that's not, when you grow up and that's literally the only exposure that you have, that just repeated all the time. I didn't figure out I was trans till I was like 14 maybe.
Right.
I didn't tell anybody for 3 years because I had internalized so many of these bad things about it.
Right.
And that's just not fair. And this is why we need to talk about it openly, like with kids and school kids, because I honestly don't think it's difficult for them to understand at all. There are just, statistically, there are some of us that are born on the ends of the statistical norm that don't fit in the boxes. And the more you try to shove us in the boxes, the more that it hurts us.
Well, sure.
And that's just unfair. And I don't understand why people want to do that to children.
Well, it's almost like, well, first of all, I was going to say something and then now I forgot it.
I mean, it's all about everybody wants to show the right way to live or a good way to live or whatever.
Well, because we can't, that's what I was going to say, because we can't give an immediate scientific answer, which does exist now, okay? But because we don't have the scientific understanding, when people first start asking why, then we do look a little confused ourselves, and they pick up on it.
They pick up on it and they think that we're just confused.
Right, and that we need direction, and they say, well, you haven't been going to Sunday school to find out about this stuff.
I'm definitely not confused. And I definitely have the science now to back it up. So I really
none
wish
of
the
us
call
are.
in line was open, because if somebody had a scientific question, I'd love to answer it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's simply neurological that creates it. But what I'm getting at here is that it's not only the transgender person that doesn't always know how to answer the question why, but there's adults that are just totally against anything that is different. You take Jazz Jennings, who has her own TV show and
Yeah.
line of products and so on and so forth. Her parents were right there in the very beginning, you know, and very supportive and so on, and still are. But I also know other people that weren't supportive. I know a lady that had a daughter that wanted to be a boy, okay? And she said to me, she was on my show one time, and she said to me, she says, you know, yeah, it did hurt at first to find out she wasn't satisfied being what she was, okay? And she said that hurt her, the mom, to a degree.
I think it's hard, like, as a parent, and I'm not a parent, but, like, I've had enough discussions with parents. I think it's hard because, to some extent, you're mourning the loss of this history with the child, but that the child has changed. I have a standing issue with parts of my family, and I love my family, so I'm going to be careful here. They're all great now. But yes, we've had some rocky issues in the past.
I think dads have a harder time with it than moms.
Very much so. Particularly, I'm the firstborn in my family, and I think that there's something in particular about having the firstborn, what they thought was son, not take on that responsibility. Right. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm open and interested in taking on that responsibility, right. But my younger brother is the one with a family and is carrying the family name, and I won't say that I'm not, and I guess I got to be honest. I'm happy that he has made our parents very happy and proud, because that weight's no longer on me. But right. it's there are different concerns and things that we have to balance in order to find purpose in life now.
Well, I think dads, especially with sons, because it's now the dad feels out in no man's land, because, you know, when the baby first comes, oh, it's a boy, good, we can play baseball, we can play football, we can play basketball, we can do all these things, hunting and fishing and whatnot.
I'm really good with a bow. I'm quite good with bow and firearms, actually. We were talking about that a little earlier.
But for them, it's more a loss of what they perceive to be a buddy that they could share the same interests the rest of their life.
I mean, if you ever asked me, like, if my dad called me and said, hey, let's go fishing, I would be down. You know, that has not changed.
Well, there's a lot of women that like to go fishing, too. So,
sure.
You know. But if for some reason the mothering instinct, they still go through a mourning period. Men, I think, go through it longer. They take it harder. that doesn't mean moms are, just the first day you tell them,
No.
oh, good, I was wondering when you were going to tell me that.
I think it's hard, you know. I think it's also a status thing with dads.
Oh, sure.
I had something, it's gone.
Well, and you're right, because before a baby comes, the mindset between a woman and a man is totally different. The man is sitting there, I hope it's a boy, I hope it's a boy, I hope it's a boy, because they want that camaraderie-ship, whereas mom is saying, I don't really care which one it is. They sometimes would prefer a girl, but because they're the one that's borning this child, they're not really, or birthing this child, they're not really concerned as long as it comes out healthy and this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
So I think moms just have a different perspective, like, oh, okay, I'm sad to hear that, but, she kind of says, I always wanted a daughter anyway, so I'll gladly take the daughter. She didn't care about Ralph, her husband, who just lost, you know what I mean? So there's a whole different, there's a whole different set of rules of mourning going on.
And it gets complicated because at the end of the day, we're all human and everyone has their own feelings about these things.
Oh, sure.
And like I said, everything's great now, so I'm not trying to impugn my mother when I say this, but like one of the first things that she said was, why can't you just be gay? And I don't think she was really thinking as she said it, right? Like it just came out. And so I don't hold her accountable, but
And how did you answer that? Curious to know.
I don't think I really had an answer at the time because I would have been, this was like 17 years ago at this point.
Right.
And like it took me, that stuck with me for a long time because I did have to eventually come up with an answer for it. And later it struck me as the reason why she said that 17 years ago, it's 2019, folks, is that at the time, it was easier to be gay than it would be to be trans. Frankly, being trans is way more expensive. Like the healthcare, I'm telling you, it's terrible, folks. We're supposed to be supporting it, but Trump is not helping at the moment, folks.
Yeah, and there's some states that aren't helping either.
No, everyone's perfectly willing to say that this is all cosmetic and a choice, and you don't need any of it. But I don't think that people fully understand the weight of dysphoria and what it does to people, and that it's not a choice, because this is heavy, but like I gotta be real here. If the choice is getting these necessary medical procedures or death, that's not much of a choice. And I don't think that people understand that, you know? There's a lot of discussion about suicide statistics in relation to our community. And that's something, that's a whole rabbit hole.
And let me kind of
Yeah.
piggyback on what you've told us. 17 years ago, the term transgender and transgenders, the people, us.
I really don't like the plural.
But my point is that being transgender wasn't as an open topic that it is today. And
I mean,
luckily we got rid of the term transvestite, in my opinion. But
well, I mean, the term still exists for technical reasons, but it's not a mainstream term, right?
But 17 years ago, there was I don't want to say acceptance, but there was a fair amount of tolerance
Well, so
for the gay community because they had forced themselves out there to a degree with milk.
I would say, I would phrase it slightly differently. I would say that it was learned during the AIDS crisis that the only way that change would be affected is if people stood up and were loud and made themselves heard.
Exactly.
Made people listen to them.
Right.
Because frankly, no one's going to care about us on the margins. And gay folks are probably like 10% of the population, depending on who you ask. And we're like 10% of that 10%. So we're like a minority within a minority. And it's even harder to get people to take us seriously. That said, there hasn't been a lot of good research, and we live in an interesting time where we are starting to actually have access to good research. We're starting to have good political advocacy. There is still an ongoing argument amongst some of the LGBT organizations, depending on what they're advocating, whether it's legal stuff or political stuff or combinations. There was a campaign in the last year, in fact, about trying to get these umbrella organizations to remove the T. Do you know about this?
No, I did not.
It was something that kind of got a lot louder on the internet and maybe didn't get as much play in meat space, as it were. But these are still ongoing arguments, even intra-community, I guess.
That kind of surprises me for two reasons. Number one, first of all, the medical community or the,
Professionals.
professional medical people, therapists and whatnot, they know the difference. One is gender identity versus sexual orientation. In other words, a gay man identifies as gay because he likes other men. And same
who you
with,
are attracted to is completely different than who you think you are.
Right, exactly. So,
If I can touch on something from earlier, because I did want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
A bunch of my friends basically tell me that they can see me reacting whenever this happens. But you refer to the group as, like I said, the plural, the transgenders. And it's the same way as, like, we don't say the gays anymore. It's considered passé. We try to avoid saying transgenders or transgenders.
well, I don't use transgender anymore because there's no such thing as past tense.
It's an ongoing process. I think that the problem with the plural is that there are people who happen to be transgender or transgender people, and we don't like to reduce people to just the label. It's the same reason why we don't say blacks. We say people of color or black folk or whatever.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, except I do use the term because what I don't like about the term, or what I don't like about, we are a community, whether we cross-dress, whether we are pre-op, post-op, whatever the case may be, we are
The trans community
the
as
trans
an umbrella
community.
thing.
Right, it's an umbrella.
Oh, and I've yelled at so many people on the internet about this because
I cannot stand these people on the Facebook that insist on saying, you're not transgender because
you're not real enough.
you cross-dress.
And everyone, I just want everyone to know you are absolutely real. You are absolutely valid.
Right.
And some people hate me saying that.
There are reasons why people are cross-gender because there's so much potential loss. Your family, your friends, so on and so forth, your job in some states, and so on and so forth. So the consequences for being transgender is much more if there's a gay person working in a company, there's a lot fewer people that's going to be against that person versus somebody that is transgender.
I think a lot of this also, as far as who gets targeted for bigotry and who doesn't, it's a lot about visibility too.
Yeah.
And I can't see who someone's attracted to unless they're flagging, unless they are making visible somehow what they're into.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that people will say are tells for gay men, you know, and that's useful so that way, you know, gay men can identify each other. This is also a thing, like I have a transgender pride flag. I don't always wear it, but I often do. And there's like a pin, right? And there's a bunch of things like this that are known. The thing is like, I can go about my life for the most part now, and people don't recognize that I'm queer or trans or whatever, and I generally get left alone. The problem is for people that are looking for a job or housing, and maybe they're visibly trans somehow. Though that's the people that we are fighting for equality for.
Right.
I don't worry about myself anymore. I want to make sure that everybody gets the same opportunities I do.
I saw a comment on Facebook one time. It's been somewhat recent too. This person said that they have gone out as a trans person, caught flack. They're uncomfortable going out, so on and so forth. They think the whole world is against them, et cetera, et cetera. And my thing to them was basically, you gotta find a place where you can start off socially. Now, that generally ends up being like a Shy Chapter or Chicago Gender Society, something like that. So it's what they call a support group.
You have to have a
Okay.
support network, yeah.
There,
The right people, like I got lucky and I got some really nice friends who took me out clubbing.
so, and that too. But then you also have to be comfortable enough in being who you are and not.
Running up.
Huh?
We're running up on time.
I know. Okay. So we're going to have to sign off. But my whole point is, you know, if you get involved in community groups, if you get involved in, say, the Democratic Party,
Come out to the center on Olmsted.
yeah,
You should know about Howard Brown. There's
American Legion has
the Civil Rights
posts.
Agenda. We have so many options and forums and ways to like find each other now. And I'll be honest, if you're trans and questioning, find me on Facebook. I'm really easy to find.
Okay, so we're going to have to go. Last thought, okay. Community groups it can be surprisingly accepting. That's what I get into because I figure, okay, if they ask me questions, I can teach them something. But without asking me questions, I can teach them something else, which is I'm no different than they are. Okay? So we got to go, and I want to thank you so very much for coming again.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Oh, anytime. Anytime.
great.
You know, if you got something you want to tell us, let me know.
For sure.
Okay? Hopefully next month we will have a call-in line. And till then, from all of us here to all of you out there, goodbye.